Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and today we're going to show some love to the rhythm section. I have the one and only Kelly Keagy from one of the most successful songwriters, drummers, and vocalists from the band Night Ranger, and I have to tell you, we spent some time together talking. He's also one of the nicest, just most genuine people that you'll ever meet. Oh, come
on. Now you're ruining my reputation.
Don't believe anything you read. No, man, seriously, he's a great dude. If you don't know Kelly, like that means if you're a millennial, let me tell you who he is. He's the drummer, one of the songwriters, one of the two lead vocalists of Night Ranger. He sang lead vocals on several of their hits, such as Sister Christian, Sing Me Away, and Sentimental Street. He's played on all 12 Night Ranger studio albums. He's got 2 of his own solo releases back in the 2000s. And he's also appeared on Brad Gillis's solo record and on Jim Peterick's World Stage album. And if you want to check out Jim, I interviewed him in episode number 280. You can find that on the website. Day after Kelly graduated high school, he packed his bags and left home to pursue being a full-time drummer. After years of playing the club circuit, he then became the touring drummer for the San Francisco band Rubicon. In 1979, he, Jack Blades, who was bass and co-lead vocals, and Brad Gillis guitar, they all formed the band Night Ranger. After getting experience with local gigs in San Francisco, Bill Graham booked them as the opening act for bands like Judas Priest, Santana, and the Doobie Brothers. Man, I got to ask you some questions about that, too. I just thought of that.
Yeah, Benatar, too, was one of the first ones.
Wow. God, just to say those 4 names that you opened for all, I mean, that's like you and Judas Priest on a concert. That's fucking insane.
It was amazing.
Yeah, you don't have that anymore. And like you might have one band and it's like $400.
No,
it's just amazing. Anyway, Night Ranger became one of the most popular mainstream hard rock bands of the mid-1980s. Their first album, Dawn Patrol, released in 82, hit number 38 on the U.S. charts and sold over 1 million copies. That's their first record. And 1983's Midnight Madness established the band as a commercial force. And it featured those hits, of course, You Can Still Rock in America and Sister Christian. That record peaked at number 15 and sold over 2 million copies. In 85, they released 7 Wishes. That was even more successful, and that reached number 10 and sold over 3 million copies. And then in 89, after the Man in Motion tour, the group disbanded. In 91, they reformed, and they've been touring and releasing records since then. And in 96, the original Night Ranger lineup of Jack Blades, Kelly Keagy, Brad Gillis, Jeff Watson, and Alan Fitzgerald reunited. In 2005, Kelly joined Reb Beach, Kip Winger on bass, and Doug Pinnick, and keyboard player Timothy Drury to form the group The Mob. That was a great record. And they released a one-off album, self-titled album called The Mob. And again, Timothy Drury, if you want to know more about him, I interviewed him in episode number 170. Great keyboard player, super cool guy.
No kidding.
Yeah. Kelly's also a member of the band Scrap Metal, along with Mark Slaughter and Gunnar Nelson. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I bet you are.
Hey, man.
You know, when you were reading some of that history, I was like thinking to myself and recalling, like when we were in Rubicon, we were kind of struggling, in 1979. It was like the band had the second record on 20th Century Fox, and we were trying to, they got me in there because they had a singing drummer, and so they were working me in. We were doing some dates and clubs and stuff like that. And shortly after that, it was just like, it was apparent that band really wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to happen. We couldn't get work. They really didn't have a tour. They didn't have much going on. So we kind of said, well, why don't we do something different? Let's just, as much as I loved playing with Max Haskett and Jerry Martini from Sly, and it was funky and it was great. Music was changing, and we were kind of in that kind of space of are we going to sit here and be an R&B band and just play, or do we want something more? And so some of the songwriting started to change a little bit. And we did some demos with Jerry Martini playing sax. And some of the songs from the first album were demoed, like Penny, and I think there was one other song. And he was playing sax. You know, I mean, we were trying to do like a Cars kind of takeoff on stuff. Some of the demos were pretty amazing. I mean, we listened to them, or we go back and we kind of like revisit it, you know, in our memories and go, God, remember that thing? That one thing sounded like the Cars, you know? And one of the songs, what is it? At Night She Sleeps is a song that was from the first album. And there's a Cars kind of esque keyboard in there. And because we were been rehearsing it, and we were like, "Oh my God, listen to that!" And it's like, you know? And we were like, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable!" You remember doing this track? We never played it, I don't think, ever live. So, but you know, that was kind of how the band kind of started to change. You know, 79 to 80. You know, we had demos out there. We recorded them many times with "Sing Me Away," Penny. We recorded Eddie. You know, Eddie's Coming Out Tonight. Some of the other harder rock songs that weren't hits from the first album, like "Don't Tell Me You Love Me" wasn't written yet. "Sing Me Away" was, but "Sister Kristen" had been written, but it wasn't on the first record. We kind of said, you know, we had another song called "Call My Name," which was actually something we actually liked better at that time. And so we recorded "Call My Name" as the ballad, and we had "Sister Christian" kind of in the can for the next record if there was going to be one, you know. So Neil Bogart at the time, who owned Casablanca Records, and then he went to and formed Boardwalk Records. Some of the guys from Casablanca, Bruce Bird was vice president, came in, and Neil was in, at the time was in, you know, he was in the hospital in 1982, 81, I guess, with cancer. And Bruce Bird brought our demo tapes that we had made at the time. And he brought him into the hospital. Yeah, he was in the hospital. And so he brought, like, you know, Bruce Bird brought him some different bands, and one of our demos was in that stack. This is what I've heard. And he liked what he heard on that. And he goes, "What are you going to do with this band?" And he said, "Well, I was thinking about," you know, Bruce said, "I was thinking about signing them." And he goes, "Yeah, I think they're really good. What else have they got?" And he goes, "Well, we're working on it." So then at that time, Brad had been asked to go with Ozzy. Everything was kind of in limbo. He was sick in the hospital. He had heard our stuff. We got some feedback. Then you know, Brad went to Ozzy and finished out. It was a 6-month tour. What was left of that tour? Who did he replace? He replaced Randy Rhoads.
He was really?
Randy was with Ozzy. I might be like mixing this up. So they were doing that tour with Ozzy, and then Randy Rhoads was killed in that tragic accident, right? And so they were kind of on hold, and our demos were being listened to. We were like all in limbo, and he got the call from Ozzy or their camp saying, "You want to audition?" And we were just not doing anything at the time. We had written a bunch of songs. We had our demos out there, but we weren't going forward. There wasn't anything happening at that point. We had just gotten that feedback from Neil Bogart, but there was no signing yet at that point. It was like, what are we going to do? I don't know.
Were you gigging out? Was there like steady gigs at least, or no?
You guys were hurting? Gigs at all. None. Just showcases that we had done. Some of them were failures. You know, we had all these record companies come out, and we played at this nightclub called the Country Club in Sherman Oaks in Los Angeles, and everybody used to do showcases there. We had done one, disastrous. You know, it was like 5 record companies came, they all passed. But our producer, who ended up producing our first three records, came out. And even though it was kind of disastrous and there was a bunch of technical problems that happened while we were playing, he liked what he heard. He liked the energy. So he signed us to a production deal, Green Light Productions, and then we made the demos, and then the rest is history. It ended up becoming the album. But those are the demos that Bruce Bird had from Boardwalk while Neil was in the hospital. So, I mean, all this stuff kind of happened at the same time, you know. So we were kind of, we were in limbo at that point. Brad went off to do that tour. We thought the band was over. We didn't know what to do, you know. So then when he came back from that tour, the band, you know, it was just kind of like, well, okay, see you. Thanks very much for your services. And there wasn't any kind of future because Randy had played all the stuff on there. They didn't know what they were going to do. They just, you know, kind of regrouped after the tour. They didn't know what Ozzy was going to do. Brad came back to us. He was a sideman anyway. He wasn't even asked to be in the group. He was just asked to help them finish the tour. So then right afterwards, you know, kind of things got back. We regrouped, and it's like, Bruce Bird wants to sign us to Boardwalk. Wow, unbelievable. You know, so we signed that deal, went in there and finished the rest of the record, and wrote some of the stuff too. You know, because we still needed 5 songs, you know, to finish it. So that's what happened. You know, Brad came back from the tour probably within a month. We went back in the studio to finish this stuff. So.
What, after you did these showcases where the 5 record companies showed up, what was such a terrible night about it?
I think that there was, you know, the keyboards went out of tune, the lighting, there's something that happened. There was electrical problems in there. The keyboards were playing in like a quarter step flat. You know, and there's all this out of tuneness on stage. We were opening for Ronnie Montrose and Gamma at the time. He was a good friend to put us on that show. Fitz had been in that band before us, so he was actually, you know, been playing with Ronnie for a long time. And then, you know, we put this thing together after he came off tour with Ronnie Montrose. But Ronnie put us on a couple of those shows. And just so we could, you know, play somewhere significant, you know, to have a showcase.
Yeah.
It was disastrous. The lighting, I don't know, something to do with lighting. There was no lights or almost no lights. There was out of tuneness on stage between the guitars and the keyboards. I mean, it just, you know, and it was really, really an awful showcase. We cut it short too. I think we just played like 5 songs. We're just like, let's get off of here. This is really bad.
After that,
you know, so yeah, it was pretty disastrous.
But when your producer, did you guys wind up having a long relationship with that producer?
We did. He did 3 of our records. He did the first 3 records, in Dawn Patrol, Midnight Madness, and 7 Wishes. Those first 3 records. So it was like basically a contract for production.
Okay.
You know? And then he went and shopped the deal. He kind of like sent it out. He got the record companies to come out, Bruce Bird and Boardwalk. I don't think they were at that showcase. I think it was all the big guys, you know, Warner Brothers and Columbia and all those. But he shopped the tape and got Boardwalk interested originally. So that was a great find. Yeah, and then it was it was horrible because Neil died.
Oh man, sorry.
In the process of all that. Oh yeah, we love that band. He passed away. Brad was on the road. You know, it was all this stuff. We were just in limbo at that point. You know, at that point. So
what kept you guys going? Like, I'm sure you're all down, and you all need to make a living. And at a certain point, you must have said, "Listen, man, we don't hear anything. We got to like fish or cut bait and make some money."
You know, that was the thing. And as a band, we didn't do anything. We were just kind of on hold. But we continued to kind of get together and write some songs when Brad wasn't there. We did some of that, some rehearsing. We wrote some songs. Jack and I got together. So we were continuing to write because with that positive energy out there through Pat Glasser production company, we just thought, well, we got to do something. But there weren't any gigs that we played. Brad was on the road. So, and I was working a straight gig. I was doing something, I don't know what I was doing. I was working for somebody in San Francisco. I was like doing a straight gig. And Jack's mother-in-law owned a flower shop. So I was working with her. I was just doing whatever I could.
Sure.
So yeah, when things actually popped, and we actually signed the deal in July '82, and then the record came out in I believe October of that year. We went to Japan. We did that whole thing. We started promoting it, came back. I mean, going to Japan was first was kind of weird because we were big stars over there. This album was breaking huge in Japan. We were like, oh yeah, and we came back to America and we were, to obscurity. Like nobody knew it. So luckily we got put on the 10th anniversary Kiss tour to promote it. Don't Tell Me You Love Me started breaking on radio.
Because they were on Casablanca as well. And they had right.
Yeah. And so that was the favor that Bruce Byrd called in.
Right.
He called the Kiss camp and said, I got this new band. Can you put them on some shows? And so they put us on the Eastern Seaboard down into the South. And so that kind of helped us break hugely. I mean, because we got a chance to play some of our own shows and break off from the tour. We played Cleveland, Cincinnati, Ohio. Those radio stations broke us big time. The East Coast, Baltimore, New York started playing us. We played Philadelphia. We played the Stanley Theater with Kiss, and that was amazing. And all those things were just starting to explode for us. And oh my God, we couldn't have been happier. At that point they were just booking whatever we could do off of the Kiss tour, on the Kiss tour. We were just, some of the dates, I mean, I remember some weeks we played, 15, 16 days straight, going to Kiss, then going off and playing our own because the radio was playing us. So we went there and played. So we just kept it going, as much as we could. And then, when we came back home, I think that we went from Kiss to Sammy Hagar. At that point, those things all happened in succession with the new album. We came back home to San Francisco playing with Sammy Hagar. We had played maybe 2-3 months with him. And we came back home and we got the word that Boardwalk Records was going out of business.
Oh my God.
On the sold out tour with Sammy Hagar. We're playing 2 nights in San Francisco, sold out.
And that's where you guys' home base was, San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we came back last, couple of days on the tour, and they're like, Boardwalk is going under. There's no records in there's no records in the record stores. There's nothing to be had. They're bankrupt. And we're like, are you kidding me? We've been doing all this work leading up to this, and there's no
records,
company,
no product.
Nothing.
Yeah.
No product, no nothing. And we're like, oh my God, this is such a disaster. Bruce Byrd flies up to those shows, hangs out with us for a couple of days, says that he made a deal at MCA with Irving Azoff, who had just taken over as head of MCA. So this is right at the end of that tour, 83. I don't know exactly when the dates were. I wish I did.
So let me just so I understand, emotionally, you're just on this hot big peak, and it's all of a sudden like they literally pull the entire rug out from underneath you, and you're like, "Fuck! Now we got to start again all over.
We got to start over again. What are we going to do? We don't have a record company. We don't." So he made a deal with Irving over at MCA, and they saw, he went in there and opened the books and said, "This is what we're selling. This is what we sold until the doors were closed." I think this is kind of the conversation. Do you want to make a deal with them? They're ready to pop big. So Irving says yes, we'll sign them. So we went there. So they Camel, MCA. There was some little smaller label that Bruce Byrd had made in association with MCA. And so he brought us over there, and then we started making. We probably only had a few weeks. You know, it was like, you got to go back in there and make another record because we got this momentum. You know, what are you going to do? You know, you guys got to go back into rehearsals, write some songs. We still had a few left over from the first album. We had Sister Christian. We had ideas, but we needed to get together and write this thing quick, you know. So we went back in there and wrote the album. And just went in there, you know, Pat was like, we're ready to go in the studio whenever you guys are ready. So it came up, pre-production, we started writing songs. Took us, I don't know, maybe 10 days to put the album together, or at least most of the stuff. And we went in and started recording it and got that thing out and kind of kept that momentum. You know, we'd had videos from Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Sing Me Away from the first album. MTV was really playing those, you know, a lot, because there was probably only maybe a handful of videos that were even on MTV at the time.
And you had gotten
we were lucky that we had that medium. You know?
And your product had been switched over. They had started producing the first record and cranking them out at whatever the subsidiary of MCA was.
You know, whatever was left, probably. I mean, I think that the original, what had happened is the IRS closed Boardwalk, or there was some sort of thing where it was like Casablanca. Casablanca was so overextended on their deal with what their original deal was, that they, you know, that when they moved it over to Boardwalk, it was still like the excess of the 70s and the 80s were just like, I mean, Neil Bogart was he was a visionary, but he was also like a spendthrift too. He spent a lot of money to promote these acts. I mean, he spent millions and millions of dollars to break acts. And he thought, you know, he knew that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you really had to do that. So he spent a lot of money, and it bankrupted companies a lot of times, you know. But anyway, so that's what we did. We went back in there, made that record, you know, got back out on the road immediately after Midnight Madness was made. So, I mean, those were weird times, man. We were scampering, man. We were hard pressed to find any time to have a break at all, from touring to go right back in and make a record. I don't even know where we found the energy. Well, I mean, thank God we had Jack Blaze, who was like he's like Jim Peterick. You know, we were talking about Jim Peterick earlier. You could give him a kernel, a small idea, and he can run with it. Yeah. And that's what Jack does. And so we would get together and we were like, I got this melody idea, and we just started cranking out, you know, songs. So we were really lucky to have that energy, you know.
You're probably too scared to stop working at that, because you're like, holy no, seriously. I mean, I'm just thinking, I'd be scared to death, because it seems like, you know, with all the shit's going wrong, if you got to build a cushion in there, and the only way you're going to do it is head down, nose to the grindstone. Just
got to keep going, man.
Yeah.
We kept going. We kept moving. We got in there. We did some good work, and got that second album. And, you know, a lot of times, you just don't know. I mean, you know, those first 2 or 3 records are the records of your career, you know, and that's exactly what happened. You know, we just had positive flow, you know, I guess, and we just kept connected, and we just, you know, we didn't let the drugs and alcohol get to us too much. You know,
that's amazing, man. What a story. Thank you, man. Wow.
I hope you can make sense of it.
No, that was great. I'm just thinking like the range of emotion that you must have gone through over there. And that's a lot of managing that. It doesn't, man, when you're younger, it doesn't seem like it. When you're older and you have to go through shit like that, it seems like it takes more energy. But I guess when you're younger, it doesn't take as much energy. You just
I mean, as long as we definitely, we had Bruce Cohn was managing us, who managed the Doobie Brothers for their whole career. And so he was definitely a big part of helping that deal, be seamless, but it was Bruce Byrd who actually went to Irving and said, look, we got to make this deal. The record company's defunct. I've been running the label, but I don't own it. I can start another label right now, so that's what he did. Camel, it was like Camel MCA was our next 3 or 4 records were on there, but it was that essential deal that was made with Irving Azoff, who had just come in at the head of MCA, and Bruce Byrd going over there and going, what do you think? Here's what I got. This band's breaking big. You can see where radio is. You can see where sales are. What do you think? Got it. So they didn't even balk. Sometimes those big labels are going, well, let me check it out. See, well, thank God they didn't, because we had MTV and radio blasting our stuff. And it was incredible that we had those things and be able to go right in there and make another record and have it out.
Oh God, the thought of being stopped again now when MTV's playing you and you have a product out there that's no longer out. God, that would have been devastating. So
it would have been a disaster. And plus they honored our record. They honored that whole thing. They honored I think that they even honored our royalties. They made some sort of deal to where we didn't lose out on what we had.
So they did the right thing.
Promote that first record too. I don't know how that happened. They made some sort of deal. Yeah, I don't know. Those guys make deals that probably aren't even on paper.
Yeah.
They probably shook hands. It's I'm saying it's like that's how things were made back then. God, it is very fortunate for us. And it kept us going, because I hear about guys all the time, something like that happens and it devastates their career. They can't get a record out for a year or whatever. And then, people get off of you and shit, it just happens.
Yeah. All the time. Wow.
We had the right people in place.
Is it true that like literally right after high school, you left home to be a full-time drummer?
I did. In fact, I didn't even go to my graduation. My parents had moved from LA to Oregon on my junior year in high school. So it wasn't a big thing for me to leave that and go right. I went back to LA and played in a couple bands that summer of 71. And then I came back and joined a band that was actually based in Oregon. It was just a club band, but I was 19 years old. And they needed a drummer, and I was a singing drummer, and so I was a great asset to a band. So I, right out of high school, went right in there. Probably that fall, 71, started playing 5-6 days a week, and then that band turned into another band, and it ended up being San Francisco based. So that's where I ended up meeting Jack and Brad. So I was in a band for like 5 years around San Francisco. I was playing clubs and, 72, 3, 4, 5, like that for about 5 years. And then in 78, I got the call, 78, 79, I got the call from Brad because he had seen me play around in this band called Rags. It was just
Rags, R-A-G-S? You said
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rags, R-A-G-S.
Yeah.
And so he'd seen me play. Their drummer was leaving. He did a lot of the lead vocals in the band, and so they were on their second record for 20th Century, Rubicon.
Yeah.
And so I went up there and auditioned and got the gig, and that's where we started our relationship in 79, and did about 6 months with that before it split up, and then we, formed this thing called Stereo. Was after Rubicon, and then Stereo became Night Ranger. So that's what happened with that. We we kind of floundered around playing clubs around San Francisco for a while, but then eventually Fitz came to see us. Fitz had a room with Jack and Molly. He had a room because Ronnie Montrose was off tour, and they didn't know what they were, Gamma didn't know what they were going to do. And so Fitz stayed with Jack for temporarily. And then he came to see us play in San Francisco and said, they came up with the idea of like, I know this the guitar player in Sacramento named Jeff Watson. What if we get together and jam and see what happens with that? Maybe we can have a project. So it was Fitz on keyboards, Jeff Watson on guitar, Brad on guitar, Jack on bass, of course, and me on drum. And so we jammed around a little bit, and got together and found we kind of enjoyed playing. There wasn't any songs at that point. We did jam. Maybe we jammed some of the songs we already had, and so we kind of clicked at that point, And I don't remember. I think we were at Gary Peel's house. Gary Peel is a guitar player from Boston. Originally, he played with Sammy Hagar, so it was all this like this networking that we knew Gary Peel. He was going on tour with Sammy Hagar. He said, why don't you guys use my studio, do some demos? And so we got together there originally at Gary Peel's house, and so that was our first jam.
When you sit and listen to this, the likelihood of all these things happening are so small. I mean, the likelihood of the five of you meeting each other and then getting along musically even is, how tough is that? Five, think about making a marriage work. You got to work, and you got to have some luck involved too. But to have five people, it's just a lot of serendipity.
I didn't even know why we clicked. I just knew that, Fitz had been in the business. He was like the elder statesman at this point. He played in the original Montrose, and then Sammy went off on himself, and Montrose went off. So he went in between the two camps. He'd played with Ronnie and Gamma. He made, I think, 3 albums with Ronnie Montrose and Gamma. And then he also played with Sammy's solo career. So we looked at Fitz like he was like a god.
Yeah.
He had played in all these like iconic, groups and stuff. So when he came and wanted to do something, we went, yeah, man, let's play with Alan Fitzgerald.
Let's do what he says.
This guy's been all over the world and played with everybody, and all this stuff. And so once we got together, we would listen to him. He would say, "Hey, well, let's try this and let's try that." And so the first couple times we got together, he was the cat, and it kind of like brought us together, And so, that's how it happened. I don't remember what happened after that or when. I remember our first gig. Our first gig was opening for Eddie Money.
From Queens, New York.
May of 1980. In Petaluma, California. It was in this small theater. And Eddie was, I think his career had blown up big time in 78, 79 when he got put on the Rolling Stones tour and all that. And so he was doing great, but he had a new record coming out. So we got on that. That was pretty cool. We got to open for him, and that was the beginning of the band.
That was a really cool thing because you were hadn't been around as a first gig. That's a pretty big.
Our first gig, yeah.
That's a very good break.
Some of these songs were being played for the first time. Didn't even have a record deal. So yeah, that was kind of interesting how that happened. So
that's amazing. So the next album, Midnight Madness, it peaked at number 15. You wrote and sang Sister Christian, which was obviously the big hit. And from what I read, tell me if this is accurate or not, the original lyrics were Sister Christy, and it was about your sister. Is that
That's
accurate?
Correct.
What's the backstory to that song, and what was going through your mind when you wrote it? Because from what I read, that's what I was thinking about when I was raising my daughter. I was like, yeah, I understand this.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. It was like an older brother to his sister, like saying, beware of all these things that happen when you get older, and boys are going to do this. And so it was kind of like I wanted to, send a message to her. But I didn't have, at that point, I had no lyrics. I just had Sister Christy, and I had Motorin', What's Your Price for Flow?
Is that her name, Christy? Is that her Is that her actual name, Christy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So her name is Christy. And so I was, like blah, 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 everything else after that. And everybody was like, what are you saying there? Jack asked, what are you saying there? I go, I don't have any lyrics. I go, I'm just saying Sister Christy. He goes, wow. He goes, I thought you said Christian. And then we said, that's better. Christian's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, so we started to when he said Christian, I thought, yeah, that's great. I don't know what I'm going to write about. So I went back and kind of pondered that whole idea, but I had motoring, watch your price. Finding, it was like about her getting, approached by boys, So it was like the older brother, going, beware. So basically I just took that idea and kind of ran with it. Kind of like yesterday, scrambled eggs, how McCartney was right. It was like, thank God he didn't write scrambled eggs.
How did she make out, your sister? Did everything work out?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, it was about her cruising too. So I kind of used the whole idea of being in cars and the whole thing. It was kind of like cool to write about cars and girls. And
yeah,
that whole thing back then. So it was just kind of simple take on a tune,
Man, it's very unusual for a drummer to sing, but it's even more unusual to have a drummer who writes and sings. And I was curious, where did you learn how to do this, or what motivated you to develop all these extra skill sets? Because it's pretty unique.
I mean, I always wanted to be a guitar player, I mean, I think that's what happens. Look at Alex Van Halen, how they switched, It's like, thank God that didn't happen. But in high school, I used to play lead guitar in a band up in Oregon. So I was in a 3-piece band. So I kind of developed some skills a little bit. But I love the blues, so that was easy to play. 1-4-5 and chords like that. And so I was really into some of the blues, the English blues bands of the 60s. So, I sat down and learned how to play some of that stuff a little bit. But I was always a better singer than I was a guitar player, and a better singer than I am a drummer, really. I mean, technically speaking. So when it came up, for me to be, I would constantly go back and forth between playing drums and playing guitar in bands in high school. But there was always a better guitar player, so I would sing from the drums, and then at one point I just came out front and sang, and there would be a band, So, in high school you're always jumping around between bands, there were 3 or 4 bands. So when this came along, for me to, I just stayed with drums at that point. I'd been just a singing drummer for probably 12 years in clubs leading up to the time that I met Jack and Brad. So, there wasn't any question who was going to be playing guitar.
Yeah, of course.
But I was always a better singer. I thought I could really contribute as a singer, but I would write from guitar, so that's, from that point of view, I'd always come in with ideas, and I knew how to play well enough to be able to get my, melody ideas across, lyric ideas across, play, and get it. And then I would just go, okay, you play, and hand it over to Brad or hand it over to Jeff, So like that. That's how it happened.
I once heard an interview with Warren Haynes, and he said the best thing a guitar player can do is learn how to play drums. Why is he saying that as a guy who's done both? How did the one help the other? And
well, I think that I think he's right in a lot of ways is timing of phrase. Melodic phrasing really helps to have that good sense of timing on. So, I mean, Lyle Workman was a friend of mine who plays great drums. He showed me a couple of things that like that iconic thing that Jeff Porcaro played. Everybody had to learn how to play that. From Roseanne. And Lyle Workman was the one that showed me how to. I couldn't play it, but he could play it almost perfectly. That whole intro, and he knew how to play it. And I was like, oh my God, that is just tremendous that you know how to play that. So he was a person that probably could have been a good drummer. I think all guitar players kind of are you know, fascinated with drums. I mean, Kelly, who's in our band, sits down at the drums every once in a while, and he looks at everything, and he has a drum set at home. He actually plays on tracks at home in his studio. I mean, I don't know if Brad does. I think Brad could, because I think that he could sit down and play a groove, and then he would edit it, you know, with Pro Tools or something, and make it work, you know. But so, you know, I always find that guitar players are fascinated with drums, because I think it's that whole phrasing, you know, with groove, you know, it's all that stuff.
Yeah. I know. I interviewed.
How about you? You got guitars hanging back there. Do you have a drum set in the room?
No, but I played drums as a kid. Nothing to talk about, but I'm fascinated with rhythm, and I always try to lock into. I mean, the first thing for me that I hear when I'm, you know, is the groove or what's going on in there.
Sure.
I interviewed 2 guitar players who play for Jeff Beck, and they both said that's the one thing he's obsessive about, is he's got to have, you know, and that's his foundation. He's got Vinny, and you know.
I think guitar players too, in general, they hone in on that, because if that's not right, then what they do is going to be out of sync. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why I've always played so simple, you know, because I have there's already so much going on with the guitar players in this band, and then being a singer as well. I've always wanted to just lay down a good foundation and have a good sense of timing. So I was always intimidated too. I always wanted to just lay down the groove and not play too much. I mean, I think of you know, like, you know, lately I'm listening to the older songs we're trying to recreate with this new project we're doing with it, recreating the first and second albums. Going back and listening to those tracks, and I you know, how kind of naive musically I was. You know, I just felt like I wasn't really, didn't really have a lot to say drumming wise, but I was a lead vocalist first and foremost. So I used that as my place in the band. That's where I fit.
Yeah.
Vocally, you know, drumming wise, I didn't, you know, plus, you know, in the early days, we didn't really play to a click. There weren't any click tracks on those first albums. And so I had to be the guy. You were the click. And so I had to be the one that everybody played off of. And so I was really nervous about playing too much, you know. So everything was like gut and boom, bang, gun, you know. Everything is like simple and just dead simple. No statements drumming wise at all, you know. But vocally, I felt like that's where I spoke.
But don't you think anything that you do, it's a creative profession, and you go back and look at it, you're never, you know, it's not a baseline. You know, who you are today is so much more developed than who you were 5 years ago, even, you know. I think anything creatively, I mean, I wrote a book in 2009, it did real well and people liked it. I went back and looked at it. I was horrified, you know. It was like, oh my God, it was a marketing book, but I was like, God, I went on way too much and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But that's where I was at the time. So, you know, I think anything creative. Kelly,
it's a stream of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what it is. I mean, that's the way things flow. You know, you got to respect that.
Hey man, you sold 6 million albums your first 3. I think you get a pass.
Yeah. Thank you, Lloyd.
I know, you know, but still,
there's not a day that goes by that we don't look at each other on stage and go, I can't believe this is still happening.
Yeah.
You know, especially when we hear an audience like last week we played in Fort Wayne, and it was like diehard 2,000 people, and we were just like going, holy shit, these people are crazy, and they sing every song, and you know, you name it. It was very cool.
Well, that's good.
It was great to see.
And well earned. You know.
I mean, I guess so. You know, I mean, we do a lot of miles, man.
Yeah,
we do a lot of work, and And it's nice to get that kind of feedback, you know. You don't always get it, but you know, just the sheer fact that we're still able 36 years later to still able to go out and play 70, 80 shows a year. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, so we just we count our stars on that one, you know.
Hey, if you're comfortable answering this, you don't have to. You were like a true rock star in the 80s. You were it. You know, you guys were like, you know, there. And that was definitely, you know, a decade of excess for rock and roll. And I was wondering, did you fall into any of the traps associated with this? And if so, how'd you navigate your way through and out of them?
I did. I got sucked into that whole thing of getting high every single night. You know, cocaine was my thing for probably 5-6 years straight while we were, you know, doing all that touring. Never did it while we played. I wasn't big on that because I had too much going on rhythmically and melodically, singing and playing. But it was always like that whole thing of like, oh man, wasn't that a great show? Oh yeah, you know, and doing, you know, copious amounts of cocaine, and just like that was kind of the time.
Yeah,
that was kind of the drug during that time. 70s and 80s had a lot of that going on. So I got hooked into that, and eventually in 1986, in December of '86, we did our last show of the Man. I think it was Man in Motion or Seven Wishes. Man in Motion. I'm not Man in Motion. I'm sorry. The Seven Wishes tour, I believe. And so I came home and I was just like horribly addicted to cocaine and everything else that went with it, cigarettes, you know, drinking.
Yeah. So
it was all that stuff. So I had decided that I needed help, and I had I started going to meetings. You know, first I went to therapy, and then she gave me a challenge. You know, just try it for 2 weeks. No, try it for a month. See if you can do without it. And I called my dad up, and he was a horrible alcoholic for many, many years. And, you know, and I said, yeah, Dad, I think I'm going to go to Betty Ford. You know, that's kind of like everybody's going to Betty Ford to get sober. And he goes, don't do it. I go, what do you mean? You know, he goes, if you can't do anything by yourself, you'll never be able to do anything. And that just kind of struck a chord with me. It was like, here's somebody that had been dealing with that. Never, you know, he never went to AA. But
he wasn't even was he sober at that time?
He wasn't really sober at that time.
Wow. Interesting advice.
Coming at that point of his life.
Yeah.
But shortly after that, he did, probably like a year after that. I think he was kind of at the same point that I was. It was a pivotal point in his life where he was like, I'm not really getting anything out of this anymore. I'm causing a lot of trouble, you know, with my family and blah, blah, blah. He was a weekender, you know, and he would just get trashed. And so to hear him say that, and that's what I thought, is that that's kind of hypocritical. It's like, but I didn't say that to him. You know, I thought, this is weird, but there's a reason why I'm getting this message from him.
Yeah.
And so I started going to meetings, and then I met somebody at a meeting, this guy named Jimmy Reitzel. He's a head engineer at a recording studio in the Bay Area. Narda Michael Walden's studio.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Farpalm Studios. He's a head engineer. So I met him at a meeting, and him and I kind of struck it. He recognized me or something like that. And then I started going with meetings with him.
So he became your sponsor? Did he become your sponsor?
He wasn't a sponsor. He wasn't really a sponsor, but he would be a sponsor, but he wasn't like technically.
Yeah.
So we hooked up, and at that point, after there was no touring going on, we took a year off. We took a year off to make, I believe, Big Life. I think it was the album Big Life. It had Secret of My Success on it. We took about a year off and just so I got sober went back into the touring thing, and that was the toughest thing because I'd only had like 6 months of sobriety at that point. And, some of the other guys weren't sober yet. And, I some of them didn't really have trouble. And Jack never had a problem with it. It was kind of a fun thing for him to do. But I was like, that was like a thing that I did every day for like 6 years,
Yeah.
Didn't let up. And that was a tough thing for me to come back. I believe I made a mistake though. I believe it was after the Big Life album, in between that and Man in Motion.
Right. I thought it was Man.
We had almost a year off, and we made that album with Keith Olsen producing. I was sober. We went back out on tour with Kansas and us doing a double bill, and we were promoting Man in Motion, and that was tough for me because not only having that 6 months, and I was having a failed marriage at that point because of being an addict. So that was a tough time. We did that tour, we came back, and then the band broke up after Man in Motion, and then I was floundering. Then I didn't really know what to do with my career, but I knew I wanted to be sober. That was number one on my list. Not continuing my career because, continuing my career meant going back into all this insanity with addiction and all that. So I took that time after we broke up to get myself together. Those were tough times, and I just stuck with it for 13 years. I stuck with sobriety. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do any drugs. Never had a slip. And the big thing for me is I got kicked out of a meeting once because I was on the road. I was traveling, and I went to a meeting, and it was a closed meeting. They didn't want to talk about anything else but just alcohol. And I was on the road, and I was like, I needed a meeting.
Right.
So as soon as I brought cocaine up, they were like, you can't talk about that in here. And of course, being stupid about the rules, I said, well, I need to talk about it. I'm on the road. I need to, and they said, get out. I'm sorry, you can't talk here. Give me that microphone.
You are kidding.
That's when I decided by myself that I needed to be sober on my own and not have that, use AA meetings as a place to be grounded. But I felt like, okay, they just pulled that rug out from under me.
Yeah, that's really weird. You'd have thought someone would have stepped up and said, hey, listen, if you hang out here for the meeting, I'll hang out with you afterwards and we can talk about whatever you want. That's really weird that nobody stepped up and did that.
No, it was really weird. It was on Santa Monica Beach. They have a meeting on Sunday. And, it was just a couple of things. And during that meeting that I got, I actually called the 800 number and I complained. I said, look, I should be able to, talk about this and not have this nonsense happen. It's like you're supposed to be there for support.
Yeah, you're going there for help.
You can't really talk about drugs. I know, it was weird.
Oh,
so I was like,
God.
okay, I should be able to do this on my own. So I'd had enough time to where, and I still went to meetings, when I needed it, but I felt like I needed to get away from this and be able to stand on my own. And I did 13 years, and then I decided, oh, you know what? I'm good with the cocaine thing. Never going to go back to that. But I want to have a glass of wine with dinner, and so I started slowly doing it, to where I could, be cool with it and not think, I need to go get wine. I need to find some. Coke was dead for me at that point. It was like I never went back, never did. So I drink wine once in a while, and I'm sure like the people at AA would be like, you can't do that. So, and I haven't been back to a meeting in a long time.
Wow, man.
So that was my little
Wow. Thank you,
Same
man.
with AA, but I've made it, man. I've made it through, and I feel really good about that,
Well,
and
big congratulations, and also big congratulations for, obviously you were feeling vulnerable and really hurting when you wanted to go talk about that. And the fact that they kicked you out, I got a lot of respect for you, because that's the perfect time to say, fuck it, man. Obviously this means I need to go get a couple of lines. No, seriously. I mean, that's like much credit to you, man.
I don't know. I mean, I just think that, I kept going back to my father saying, if you can't do anything by yourself, you won't be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And I thought, I kept saying, and the serenity prayer, those things all helped me.
Sure.
I still use that to this day. When you get out there and you're like, you have 2 hours sleep and you're like, man, it's like, I feel really weak right now. It's like, those things all still help me to this day.
Yeah.
And thank God they do. It's amazing.
Wow. I have a bunch of questions from all that. Did your dad ever wind up getting sober?
My dad finally got sober the last 10 years of his life. He just stopped drinking by himself, never went to AA, never went back drinking. He had he crashed his pickup, didn't roll it, but he went into a ditch when he was drinking. And it scared him so bad. I think he was like 65. And it scared him so bad. It scared him straight. He just totally went, called my son, his son, my older brother, Jim, called him up and said, hey, you got to come get me out of the ditch or whatever. And I think that was the last time he ever drank. And I don't know how he did it, because he'd been drinking his whole life.
Yeah.
Like since the time he was in World War II, all the way through his life, he drank every weekend.
Yeah, but I bet you inspired him, to be honest with you. I would guarantee it. And
his son too, he got sober. My older brother had his bouts with it, and he got arrested, and then that changed his life. And I think my son, I think my father was watching his two boys, kind of do it. And I think that he just realized, I got to cut this stuff out.
That's great.
Stop torturing my family.
Yeah. Wow. A few questions for you. You came home off that tour, December '86. Was there anything like that triggered, like, you to say, hey man, I'm done. I need to get some help? Because that's a heavy thing to say I got to do, and then I'll go do it.
I think it was the marriage. It's like the person I was with was just like, I can't do this anymore. Can't do this with you anymore. And the fact that, that I was thinking about it all the time, and that I needed some sort of release, the drugs give you sometimes, or whatever it is. The fact that, I think it was just, I don't know if you've ever done the drug before.
Coke?
Yeah.
I did Coke like once or twice. That's nothing. But I tell you that I can see if you're
in. There's a thing called cocaine psychosis. That it's audio hallucinations. It plays tricks with your brain. You think you're hearing something. You've been up for like days. And I realized that it was just the blood pumping in my veins.
Yeah.
And it was just causing this insanity in my ears. I was hearing stuff, and I got so angry at myself because that was going on. It was like, oh, I'm hearing this thing, and I realized it was my heart pumping in my ears, and I was like, what? A stupid realization of that. I was like, that's it.
Wow, man, that's like,
I can't take it. It's a torture, And so then the whole thing happened with, I went to a meeting. I got challenged by my dad. I went to, therapy, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All just like, suddenly I just said, it's got to happen. Then I started running, started exercising. Then I got my endorphins, and I got all that, everything that drugs were giving me at that time. I got it from exercise and being creative. So, I was lucky. Some people can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't stop,
You look like you're pretty fit today. You obviously stayed in shape and do take care of yourself.
I try as much as I can.
Yeah.
Playing does it a lot for me.
Sure.
I also exercise, so yeah, it's, you have to.
Man, good for you. I'm really happy for you, man. That's really
so
good.
much.
That's so awesome, man. When you, the first, outside of like when you first went back to touring, when it was sort of intimidating, once you got used to that and you realized, hey, I could do this without using, what were the biggest differences that you noticed playing sober and functioning sober versus prior?
I mean, I could sustain, the whole set without being, I never really got winded or anything like that or got tired, but I think that when you get to this third show in a row and the fourth show in a row and you're on this thing and you're playing, that's when I noticed that I got all my energy back, if I could just like push, through the week and be great, sleeping better, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, that's great, man. What prompted the band to break up? Again, if it's not,
oh no, that's fine. I think it was just, we were doing, the way the beginning of the career started with a bang, and we were just like nonstop. I saw lightning.
Dude, did you hear that? Oh my God.
I saw the window.
I thought something was going on here. That's the way it is.
I saw a flash out in the window.
Yeah, we get these, we've had a bad storm season this summer. Typical Florida.
Been getting a lot. I think that it was, the egos were getting, we were kind of getting like, we were getting kind of full of ourselves. I think all of us, and the tension of doing so many performances, so much travel, and so much, recording the album, going on tour, coming home, recording the album, going on tour, hotels, flights. It was just, we were frazzled, man. We were just burnt out, and we needed a break, and we just needed a break.
I totally get that.
It's just what happens if you don't take a break. You start to burn out. You start to like get on each other's nerves. You're living together.
You're living together, man. Imagine if you had 4 other guys in your house staying with you. Like I wouldn't want that for more than a day or two. No, seriously. I'm like, it's like, but you're on it's nonstop. I could totally get it. You need a break. That makes like complete. In fact, the fact that you went so long with the drive and ambition you guys had and how much you worked is like pretty freaking amazing.
I was just reading Don Felder's book about the Eagles, and the second time I'd read it because I wanted to see if I could get some more out of it. And God, talk about drugs and their whole thing in the 70s, and just like talking about how burnt out they were when they did that Hotel California tour, and they went right into Long Run. That the end of that tour, they were just like, I never want to see you again.
Yeah.
Please go away for half of my life.
Well, they meant that literally with him, I think.
Totally. That was excessive. Though.
Yeah.
one or two of the tours we did were probably like 16, 18 months. They were just like nonstop.
That's crazy, man.
We'd take a 10-day break, and then we'd go right back 6 weeks and just hammer away. And some weeks were 6 days, we were just pounding it, and we just got burned out, and it was nice that we took that break. Jack, did the damn Yankees. That was really fortunate that they put that band together with famous people so that they had some longevity. They had 3 or 4 years of, good touring and a couple of albums. And then when he came back, it was fresh again. None of us did. I didn't do anything. I did some solo stuff, but I didn't do any solo albums. At that point, I just was writing with a lot of people. Brad and I did an album that was with Gary Moon, and him and I we put out an album, and there was Night Ranger, and called Feeding Off the Mojo. That was kind of fun, but it wasn't the original band. It wasn't Jack, him and I singing together and all that interplay, and it wasn't Jeff and Brad, and Fitz. So once we got back together after all that, I mean, we were very, very happy. 1996, 97, we started making records again and being creative. It was joyous. Man.
That's great. And it was probably very natural. It was probably something you all wanted at that point in time. It wasn't like forced.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. It's important to take, man, even like sometimes, even in your, like, I love my wife dearly. I mean, I really do. But sometimes, we'll just say, hey, let's talk tonight. Let's take a few hours, man. It's like, because we both work at home too. It's like, I think it's important. You have to do that in a relationship. It's smothering.
I agree. I mean, anything that's repetitious like that, you need a break from.
100%, man. Hey, how'd you hook up with Timothy Drury and the rest of those guys for the Mob? And is there any reason that group didn't continue? You guys had some good cuts on there, man.
I know, it was really fun. And it was originally supposed to be Reb Beach's solo. So Frontiers approached him about doing a solo record. And then, and since then they've done a lot of these records. And, it's like they've done the Revolution Saints. There's been some other bands that have been projects that they put together, kind of like, hey, they call up everybody and say, well, you want to do an album? So it started out being Reb Beach's solo record, and then Reb got a hold of, Kip and said, you want to help me write this, and you want to help, and then it was like, okay, we're going to have Kip produce it, and then Kip kind of like, got a hold of everybody else, people that he thought would be good for the project. But Doug Pinnick was like a total like surprise for me. And I thought, I'd seen his original band do a project. And I thought, God, the vocals are amazing. The three-piece band singing harmony so well together. And so I thought, well, God, what's he been doing? Is this going to work? And so when we all got together, we never played. We never played tracks together. All the stuff was written basically by Kip and by Reb. And so they called me up. I went over to Kip's studio in Nashville. I was living there at the time. Okay. And listened to some of the tracks and listened to Doug sing. And I was like, holy shit, this is really cool, man. Mm-hmm. This could be really fun. And I was already like thinking, it would be fun to play. Never happened though. Because everybody had so many different projects going on at the time,
Was that when Timothy was with Whitesnake, or was he off of that? Oh, yeah.
He was with Whitesnake, and that thing was going. They were probably playing 100 and something shows that year, And Pinnick was playing with his band. I'm sorry,
King's X, right?
Yeah, King's X.
Yeah,
they were kind of like on a hiatus at that point. But I know that they went and did some more dates after that. They came to Nashville and they played. I went and saw them after the project was out, and we talked about it. I said, Doug, you want to do any dates with this thing? And he said, God, I'd love to. I mean, I'm so busy. And then Winger was going and Night Ranger was going. It was impossible. Yeah. We could never find even like one date to do like the Frontiers Fest or any of those things. We couldn't even find any time, so it never happened, unfortunately. But just recently I hit up, where did I hit it? I think Doug hit me up, and then I hit Kip, and we had like a little group text, and I said, hey man, we should do something, and
let's put the band back together.
Busy. Kip, of course, has got his like classical project, and that's taking up a lot of his spare time other than Winger. So I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I'd love it to happen.
That was a good band, man. Timothy's a pretty creative guy. He's an super interesting, cool guy.
He's a good photographer too.
Yeah, he's photography, and he does an exhibit with light and music. He's just
I don't know about that.
Yeah, he does it's called The Cube. He does something with like, he's in a cube sort of, and he does performance art basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I got to check that out. I'm going to check that out.
Man, I'll send you the link for his interview. He talks about it.
Oh yeah. I'm going to go see. I'm going to go see that. Yeah.
He's a
cube art, huh?
Yeah. The cube art. Yeah. So where are you originally from? Are you from LA then that you moved?
Yeah. Los Angeles.
Okay.
Been on the West Coast, for the whole time. 20 years in San Francisco when the band started. Born and raised in Los Angeles, and then my parents bought property in Oregon. I lived there for a while, but ended up in San Francisco with a club band for 5-6 years, and then got in Rubicon and then Night Ranger.
What kind of work did your folks do?
My dad was a truck driver. I thought I was going to be a truck driver because I kind of like idolized my father. I used to go with him all the time, and he drove big semis. Like
long haul
Yeah.
truck. Wow,
Actually, it wasn't long haul. It was out of Los Angeles. He was in a milk company, so he would deliver milk up to the commissary up in Edwards Air Force Base and in the Lancaster outside Los Angeles. So he'd go overnight and return. So it wouldn't be long haul. But he drove these gigantic semis, and he'd go up there and he'd unload them himself.
God, doing that in L.A., that's got to be.
By himself.
Wow.
It's like a set of doubles, and he'd drop one box, and then he'd take the second box up to the commissary, unload that at the Air Force Base, come back, and then do 8 trucks, put them on a conveyor, and then load them up.
All by himself?
One had the orders hanging out on the outside, and he'd put them on a conveyor belt and put them down the line, and he'd throw them in there. I mean, it was like, dude, it's like, who does that?
Yeah.
Who works like that? I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I idolized him. I thought he was the strongest man in the world. Pretty much was. And I thought I was going to do the same thing. But, right out of high school, as I told you, I got in the band and started, performing and playing 5-6 nights a week and supported myself, straight out of high school. So it's all I've been doing. It's all I've known,
And were any of your parents musical?
No, none of them. I mean, my dad could sing perfect. He could sing like anything from the 30s and 40s. He remembered and could sing it a cappella, and could whistle perfect. And I thought, wow, man, what a voice this guy has. He never did anything with it because he had a family to support right out of World War II, and he went right out of that and came home and started to support a family right away.
Yeah.
3 older brothers and
that's a big family.
Yeah,
5 of you.
Yeah.
Oh man, that must have been, your sister must have been so spoiled after 4 boys.
Oh my God. Well, and there's 10 years between her and I.
And you're the next oldest.
Yeah. I was the youngest, and then 10 years later, they had a hiccup.
Dude, you know what? It's like I have 2 older sons, but there's 8 years between my younger son and my daughter. So she was like spoiled rotten.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's
why when I read that, the lyrics was for Sister Christian. Sister Christian, I was like, God, man, this is something I could totally. I mean, I used to sit and try to talk to my daughter. It was just like,
Oh, I know. My mom's spoiled rotten. She never. I mean, she had everything done for her, and she was the spoiled, and all the boys were out of the house at that point, so it was just her, and so my mom and her were, best friends and inseparable.
Yeah, same here, man. Wow. Hey, man, you had a bit of a health scare a while ago. You doing good now?
I'm doing great.
Yeah,
doing fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was a defective heart valve from birth, so it just happened to come about. As you get older, it starts to affect you a little bit. I thought, I was diagnosed probably 10 years before that with asthma. I'd never had any trouble with problems with my lungs, but I guess the symptoms were coming from this heart valve, and I didn't know it.
So it wasn't asthma.
Yeah, I haven't taken any of the asthma meds that I was on for many, many years. And when I went to my heart doctor, the cardiologist, he said, I got to tell you, he goes, you may not have asthma. It might be this, because they discovered it because it was beating funny, and then it started getting louder and louder. And over the course of like 3 or 4 years, they started to notice this is really kind of weird. And so they measured it with echoes and stuff, tests like that. And they said, it's starting to close. And, each one of us have a tricuspid main valve that takes the blood out of your heart into the rest of your system. And it does this, it has this like 3 flap valve. Well, mine was 2. It was only 2. So it was opening like this.
Oh, wow. For your whole life.
Started to calcify, which easily happens when there's only 2 flaps. So it started to get tighter and tighter and close and not allow the blood to get to the rest of the body. So they did a test where they go up to your leg, and they go up with a camera and they look inside your heart through the main artery of your leg and into your heart. And they took pictures, and they said, yeah, look at, man, this thing is like really tight. We need to replace it. And thank God it wasn't like 10 years ago, because they were really good at doing it.
Yeah.
Now.
Wow.
It's almost like every day. I mean, I found this great doctor in Nashville, and Mike Masalam, who is the CEO of this company called Edwards Life Science, who makes valves. They make mechanicals, and they make pig and cow valves. And he said, "There's this great doctor in Nashville. Go to him, Dr. Rodriguez."
How did you know this guy, Mike?
Through my fiance. My fiance is her cousin. So she knew right away, because she'd been kind of through this with her mother.
Oh.
So we called Mike. He.
Amazing
he said,
how this like
Dr. Rodriguez right there. He's the best that there is. I was like, whoa, you're kidding me. So we went over and after about 3 visits, he goes, I saw you in Puerto Rico in 1984, and I was like, what?
He was a fan.
He was a fan, right? He knew who I was.
That's great,
but he didn't bring it on. He didn't say anything. He didn't want to seem, weird. So when he brought it up, and I go, okay, I'm singing at your daughter's wedding. There you go.
That's great, man.
Took care of me and was amazing, the whole thing came out. I mean, it's quite a surgery. I mean, even though it's kind of routine for him, he was a specialist at it, and he did a lot of extra things to the heart to make it like tight. Fixed a secondary valve in there, and because since that was that the main valve was kind of stressing out the heart, because over the years it just it starts to pump hard in the artery.
Sure.
So some of the other secondary valves, get damaged, from working too hard, So he fixed all that stuff, and
that's great, man.
It saved my life,
Did that hurt when they did that camera thing? I just imagine that. Like, is that painful?
The catheter thing up my leg did not hurt.
Oh, it doesn't. Oh God!
Nope.
When you were saying it, it sounded so.
It did not hurt at all, and I was awake for part of it.
Okay.
That surgery wasn't anything, but the main one, they had to open up my chest, and it was like 6 days in the hospital, and it was painful because they have to open up your chest plate. Basically, you have to open it up. And
they saw it, or
crack you open.
Yeah. Ugh.
It sounds a lot worse, but I was in really good shape.
Yeah.
So they do that instead of going up through your leg. When you're older and they go up through your leg because, you know, you're not healthy enough to be able to survive.
Yeah.
Or you know, it took, you know, like a month or 6 weeks to get back in shape. But nowadays, like at 2 a.m, they get you up, wake you up, and you start walking. I just want you to know you're going to have to do this every day. And so it was like every day I had to go 2 to 3 mile walk. You know, they just they pound you. They make sure that you're going to be able to handle this. And so they get you up on your feet.
Dude, you're a warrior, man. You've had
I've been through a lot of shit.
Yeah, man. And no, but it's cool though, man, that you're here. You made it. You're a cool dude. I mean, you're not like, you know, I'm
very, very lucky.
Yeah. But
very lucky.
I'm always attracted to people that have been through stuff because I think that A, I could learn a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And B, it's like, okay, this guy's got it, man. You know,
Dude, I want to keep playing when I'm 85. You know, I mean, I still have that desire to be as good as possible, and I think that all of us, as a band and as a whole, we all have that.
Yeah.
You know, that's what keeps us, the three of us together. Is we want to be as good as possible.
Yeah.
Every night, and so you know that's what it is for us. You know, very thankful. You know.
Music. Do you remember the first record or CD you ever purchased? Probably be a record.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a CD.
I can't remember the name of the band, but it was an old doo-wop group from the late 50s and early 60s. Blue Moon. They did a version of Blue Moon. And then of course it was my brothers had Elvis records, Little Richard. All those, I heard those songs blasting out of their bedroom. So it was like, you know, definitely Little Richard. Blue Moon was the first single I ever bought. And of course the Beatles shortly after that, you know, but it was Little Richard, you know, on the R&B side. 'Cause what a voice. Yeah. I mean, those early records, you know, him singing, you know, Long Tall Sally and some of those songs. Oh my God. I mean, they're so influential. And the way I learned how to sing was to copying Little Richard, copying Paul McCartney and Lennon to really try and see how close I could get to singing like them.
So you were super serious about your singing.
I just took to it, man.
Yeah.
I took to it. I remember the first album I held in my hand was that Elvis Presley's gold record with him with a gold suit on the front,
mm-hmm.
and had all these gold singles were on that record, you know. And I just remember going, "Oh my God, this guy!" You know, for one thing, you know, like later on realizing that those were all live performances, and that just like struck me, like, you know, the Beatles, Elvis, all those guys, those performances were live. They probably did it a bunch of times and got perfect, but that was like how I came up in the ranks. Like, you have to learn how to do this. You have to get this if you're going to be a singer, you know. And so those were the records that I learned how to copy. You know?
So your baseline was pretty high. You had the bar set pretty high, which was great.
I mean, I think it's like, you know, when you're in sports, the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like when you watch your favorite, you know, sports stars. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and with Dodgers. The Dodgers had Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale as pitchers. You know, I mean, it's like, oh my God, these guys are throwing 100 miles an hour. And Maury Wills was the second baseman, and I think it was a second baseman or a shortstop, but he was you know, I got to watch these guys be huge stars, and it was all about perfection. So I kind of like, you know, I listened to blues and R&B and tried to sing like those guys. You know?
If you had to pick Desert Island Discs, no particular order, just for today, man. 3 of them. What were your top 3? Like, so what's your knee-jerk reaction?
God, I mean, I have to say, just because I'm reading the book about Don Felder, I love the Eagles. I think that they're Eagles' greatest hits. That would be a good choice. But I think that Rubber Soul.
Yeah.
Rubber Soul was a huge record for me when I was a kid. And then that Beatles, that Elvis Presley.
The Gold.
Yeah. I mean, that was huge. So any of those artists, I could probably pick any one of those 4 artists and be happy with that choice. Yeah.
It's funny, you're singing, and I guess this is for everybody. Your singing voice and your speaking voice don't sound the same, but
sound the same.
Yeah, I'm sure that's for everybody though. Very few people probably sound like their voice.
Have you ever talked to Dean Castronovo?
No, I have not.
He's an amazing singer. And
he's the drummer. The drummer for.
He sings like Steve Perry. Sounds like Steve Perry when he sings.
Really?
Right? He was a drummer for Journey. For
yeah.
many years. Now he's with. What's he doing now? He's like. It's not Journey anymore. Anyway, I'll think of it in a second. But, Dead Daisies.
Right. Okay. With Richard Fortus.
Dead Daisies now, but he sings like Steve Perry. When he even talks like, he goes, "Hey man, how you doing?" And it's like real gravelly, like that. And then he sings perfectly in tune, perfectly clear notes.
That's crazy, man.
Super high. I mean, it's like, I know, isn't that funny, man?
Yeah.
That is? It might be the device too, you know.
Hey, I said you're a warrior a few minutes ago. What's the most important things you've learned about yourself through life in general and through your career experiences, Kelly?
You know, as many people as we come in contact with, I think that one of the most important things is to be honest and to also be kind. I think it's important because, especially nowadays, man, where there's so much tension in the world right now, you know, with terrorism and all this nonsense and crazy stuff going on, it's really important for us to be really grounded, I think, and to be kind to everybody you meet, because you never know what that person is going through. I mean, you know, like you're driving in your car and you see somebody go by you, like, you know, 100 miles an hour, and you go, yeah, you know, mother.
Yeah.
You almost killed me, but you have no idea that guy might be, on his way to the hospital. You just don't know what people are going through nowadays.
Yeah.
Just because of it, the world is not what it was when you and I grew up.
It's a stressful place, man. Yeah. You know what? I find too, when you're like being kind is a lot less stressful in your own life. It takes a lot of energy to be an asshole. No, it does.
Exactly.
No, seriously.
Think about it. I mean,
it's exhausting.
Go ahead.
It's exhausting. You know, it's like so much easier to be nice and like just smile and like be kind. You know, it's just like a low stress thing.
It's not easy to remember to do that because we're all kind of caught up in trying to live and trying to, to get through it. And I mean, I think you and I grew up in the age of no cell phones.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like sometimes those things, man, if you could just turn it off for an hour, you think we could do it? I don't think we could do it.
Yeah, I'll tell you
I think it'd be impossible.
When I go out with my wife, we have like two not rules, but we try to do this. We never talk about the kids, and we put our phones away. Because
you could do that, for an hour.
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half, whatever. It depends how many drinks we're having or where we're, what we're doing. But no phone and no kids conversation.
That's got to be tough because they're a huge part of your life. It's like everything.
Well, but they're older now, and that's the only thing we've ever in our history together argued about. So we just like, we just have differing views on things. So we always say, let's not talk about the kids. And it's easy to do that because we both want to go out and we enjoy our company. We enjoy each other's company. We know, okay, if we don't deal with this, if we don't do this, and they're older, like we don't really need to talk about it. They're on their own.
Be present, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you like most about yourself? That's a tough question.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know, man. I think I have a lot of flaws that aren't really out there, that I'm still working on myself. I think that just like we were talking about earlier, just the compassion, I think that's probably, favorite thing is that I thrive on trying to understand other people. And I think the older I get, the harder that is.
Really?
Understanding the human beings and what they're going through and try and have compassion for them and understand that they're going through the same stuff we all are, and it's hard. I just think that you become, I think that you become a little bit more selfish the older you get. Being in this profession too, because everybody wants to. Everybody wants
a piece of you. That's a tough thing about your business, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think it's hard for me to separate that sometimes, but I think that's what it is,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I can understand that. That's got to be tough. I interviewed someone a while back. They had an album called the record was called like Everybody Wants a Piece of Me or something like that. And I'm like, man, yeah. I get it.
Well, and it's hard to have patience, with, in understanding fellow man,
What's your best childhood memory?
I think when I got a chance when I was 16 years old, I was playing with some of the members of the band, the Safaris.
Oh, wow.
And I was just this young kid that just came in because they wanted to do a couple of casual gigs on the weekend, right? And their history and stuff like that, I knew about. I knew their music. And so we went over to the recording studio that they recorded, which was Richie Podler was this engineer and producer that owned a studio it was in the Valley in Los Angeles. We went over to the studio and I got a chance. It was the first studio I'd ever gone into. So I remember it so well. The bands that I was totally in love with at the time were, I believe it was 1967, 68, like that. Was Steppenwolf and Three Dog Night.
Great
they
bands.
Were starting to blow up. And so this it just so happens is where they had recorded those albums, the early albums, Steppenwolf albums and Three Dog Night albums. So I was freaked out. I was like, oh my God, Floyd Sneed had his drum set over there in the corner, recorded all those early Three Dog Night hits. And, and Steppenwolf and John Kay. And so I was like imagining all this music being made in this little studio. And so I was like obsessed, totally obsessed. So I met Richie at the time. And Richie went on to produce the first two Rubicon records.
Oh,
so
wow.
Then I was connected with him through Jack, and later on in life.
That's crazy.
Right back around again, and I got to meet Richie and Bill Cooper, who was the engineer at the time in that studio. They made so many records in that studio. Richie Podler was a great guitar player who played on all these old surf records that were background music for a lot of the surf films that were being made at the time. Like, Annette Funicello, and they were all dancing on the beach, and he was playing all the guitar in the background. And so there was all that history with Richie that I looped back around. But when I was 16 is when I actually walked in that studio and was going to record something with these guys from the Safaris. So that memory has never left me.
That's really cool. They were a surf band, the Safaris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They played, they had that song, what was it, Wipeout?
Yep.
And Surfer Joe was one of the things. And so these guys were, they were like famous, and I was like, got a chance to walk in the studio and just, it was all recreated in my head. Oh, Floyd Sneed. And then later on, I got a chance to go to the Forum in LA and see Steppenwolf and Three Dog Night play a live show. So it was like Steppenwolf, Three Dog Night, probably maybe a year later. Steppenwolf, Three Dog Night, and the Grassroots, a triple bill.
That's crazy, man.
And it was like hit after hit after hit after hit. And it was on my birthday, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, so it was all that. I'd gone into the studio, and then I'd gone maybe 6 months or a year later and watched them perform, and Richie had produced and recorded both of those two bands. So I was like in heaven. I was in freaking heaven.
That's great. Yeah,
it just like launched me into the whole idea of recording, how it's been being done, I mean, it was just a total like eye opener and revelation for me.
But you knew you were going to be doing that at some point anyway, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I did. At that point, I just knew that in some way I was going to be playing music, doing something. And that's what I did. That's all I ever did is I played in bands in junior high school and high school. And then I went right from high school, right and started playing and making a living in clubs. And then right from that, right to this,
Most important person in your life today?
Well, I don't know if it can be a person, probably like mother, father.
Yeah. Whoever you want.
And the music teacher, whom I just saw this last summer. About a month ago, she came to one of our shows in Oregon. But she, in my junior and high school years, she was the music teacher, and she was so influential. I got to tell you. And she had this class called Music Lab, and which was all these people were thrown in there, not necessarily musicians. Maybe they were poets, and it's like, and so they all came to this class to learn like either music history or to play music together or write music together. And so Mrs. Forbley, her name was Jane Forbley, and she brought us all together, and we all connected with music somehow.
That is so cool.
She would play Doors music, and then she'd play classical music. Oh, how do these two things relate? And we'd all be sitting there like, I don't know. And then we'd like tear it apart, and we'd analyze music. We'd listen to Janis Joplin, and we'd listen to Mozart, and then she'd pair us off with people like, okay, Marilyn over there is a poet, but she doesn't know how to play music. Let's have you and her see if you can write a song together, or see if you can somehow relate. And
my God, so that's such an enthusiastic thing.
It was incredible. Yeah. So she kind of really made me think about song structure and how do you write a song and what is a song and what is it, is it lyric and melody, and how does that work? And so she had a poem that she wrote, and I put music to it. And I realized that I could relate to music much. I had a close relationship with music and what it meant to write a song back then.
That's great, man. Most important thing.
I saw her this last summer. She came. She's like, wow, man, she's 80.
And it's cool that you still keep in touch with her, though.
Yeah.
Well, she must feel well, she's got to feel great because I'm sure she's got a bunch of students. How rewarding is that people that she taught when they were kids still keep in touch with her, That's got to be fulfilling.
And she influenced everybody. Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Most important thing your dad taught you?
Oh, my God. Work ethic.
Yeah.
My father, he like I said, he drove a truck for 26 years, and then he went into the lumber industry when he moved up to Oregon in the 70s. And so he never missed a day of work in his life. And that just like that, he got this plaque for not missing a day of work for 10 years. They gave him 10 years. Who does that? Not even when he was sick.
Nobody.
Did he miss a day. Not even when he was hungover.
That's rare, man.
It was unbelievable. And when I saw that, I thought, my God, I mean, this is really kind of what's, a big part of life. It's not only like family, taking care of your family, but also, enjoying what you do. Maybe he didn't love it, but he knew that he had to put his whole 100% of himself into work if he was going to, support his family. And I could see the passion that he had for the two jobs that he did with the driving truck, and then when he went into the lumber industry. He was on the assembly line at a lumber mill. And they put him in the position of being able to cut 2x4s to and not wasting material. He could eyeball wood coming up the line and cut it to the right, length and perfectly. And it was a machine he had to run. But he had to eyeball it first while it was coming up and program the machine. This is still all manual. It wasn't computerized. But, and then to watch him work was a joy to me, because it really got instilled into me like, okay, you have to really understand what you're doing when you're working. You have to know what you're doing, how to do it, and I don't know. I guess you put yourself into that job, so it has to be. There's a passion there. You have to have for what you do. No matter what it is. That's what I learned from him. Work ethic.
And how about your mom?
And mom too. She took care of all of us.
That's a hell of a lot of work. I had 3. 5 is honestly 5 kids. Being a mom is the toughest job out there. Period, man.
Yeah, having the kids, then taking care of them, feeding them, while dad's off bringing money in. That's a full-time job in itself. How come they didn't get paid?
Yeah, no, it's the toughest job around. I told my wife that.
It's unbelievable.
Hey, do you have any? What's that?
She's fighting dementia right now.
Your mom? Oh man, I'm sorry. Is your dad still around, or he passed?
She's 92 years old. She's had a good life. She's still got a sense of humor like crazy. Keeps everybody laughing.
Is she in California or in Oregon?
She's in Oregon, yeah.
Man, well, I hope everything comes out all right with her. Sorry about that.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
Do you have any non-musical superpowers?
No, I don't. I don't have any superpowers. I wish I did. I wish I could play like Dean Castronovo and sing like I do. That's a superpower right there. I should be president, right?
There you go, man.
Oh God, that's funny.
What are you proudest of that you've done, musically and personally?
God, personally, man, I'm still working on that. Aren't we all still working?
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the fact that I don't know. Can still find happiness in this crazy world. There's that's kind of a superpower, isn't it? But musically, I think that I've challenged every day that we play, singing and playing. I hear live recordings, and I'm pretty happy with what happens with it, and I feel like I have to step back because, when you're doing that, you're not hearing yourself. You're hearing, you're in the middle of the performance, so you don't you're not analyzing yourself, and you're not going, oh, I could have sung that better, or could have played that better. But the sheer fact that I get to do this and do it pretty good, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm amazed sometimes that I'm still doing it after all these years. Still singing lead from the drum set. I mean, it's like so many of my peers. I mean, like, you remember this guy Pete Rivera? He was in this band called Rare Earth.
Yeah, sure.
And he was the drummer and lead singer of the band. So I thought, who is this guy that can play like he did? Played R&B music, funky, sang like he did. I mean, how many years? And I saw him 10 years ago. He was still playing and singing great. I thought, God, man, if I could still be in this band or doing what I do 20 years into it. But now here we are 36
years, man.
It's unbelievable, So the fact that I can still do this, pretty proud of it.
There's not a lot of singing drummers like Henley, Dean, I guess this, what's his name? Rivera?
Pete Rivera.
Rivera. It's not a ton of.
Ringo, he's still out there.
Yeah, that's right. Ringo.
He's still out there doing it. A lot of people go, he's not really a singing girl. Well, he
is. He sure is.
I heard live at the Hollywood Bowl, 1963, broadcasted over the radio, and he was singing Boys. And he was live, and he sang great and played great. I mean, that was a huge influence on me at the time. Yeah. It's like, Ringo, they would give him a shot. Do it. There you go. Sing it. Play it. I mean, it's incredible, man.
Are you single or in a relationship now? What?
I have a fiance. I'm in a relationship. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Awesome.
I'm lucky. I found a good woman, man.
You're not jaded from a lot of guys get jaded after they have a bad marriage or something like that.
I've had a few of them, but yeah, it's just like I keep trying. Because I want to be in a relationship.
Yeah,
it's important to me. Family is everything.
Yeah, man, it's
Yeah,
it's a good
how many
thing.
kids you have?
3.
Oh, nice.
And I've been with my wife 26 years.
That's amazing. You and Jack, probably the longest. It's been 35 years.
That's the miracle of my life, to be honest. I don't know how. I mean, that's literally the best decision I ever made, and I am grateful every day for my wife, and I tell her too. It's not like I'm really lucky. I'm happy, and not that it's sunshine and roses every moment, but she's a great. I mean, she's just real supportive, and she kicks me in the ass when I need it. And no, I mean, no, because this is my second marriage, and when I realized I really wanted a strong woman, because, like, to me anyway, when do you need someone? When the shit hits the fan.
That's right.
And I need a strong person, because I don't get down a lot, but when I do, I need someone to say, "Hey, get your fucking ass up and go do what you need to do." And that I'm like, okay, great.
You pussy.
Yeah, right. I mean,
get up off your ass and
I mean, I need support. That's support. I don't need, emptiness. So that was really important to me. So, and I married way over my pay grade too. So, yeah, I'm not going to tell her.
Well,
that.
Good for you. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Both bringing something to the table, man.
Yeah, man, I'm very.
lucky.
Either
it's money or it's
and I had no money when I met her, none. And we had 2. She says now, I should have run. I had a divorce, 2 kids, and a dog.
Shoot, I know I've been through it.
Yeah,
times. Yeah, yep.
Do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
I don't have a lot, because music is all consuming for me.
Yeah.
I mean, the way we've been doing it too, the travel's been pretty brutal, so it's a lot of flying and then we're, we've been making new records. Like every couple of years we'd come out with a new record. And so in the off season, we're like getting together, writing, recording, You know, I mean, this last record was so weird for us because we'd never actually done a record where we weren't in the room together recording the parts.
Oh, you did tracks at home?
We did demos together. We did the demos and recorded them. So everybody knew what the parts and the arrangements were. But everybody had their own studios, and we weren't willing really to, on the off season, to just, okay, we're going to go for a month and, you know, leave town again and leave our families. And so we recorded it in our studios. So it, you know, it does take time. I mean, you know, in between traveling, we would go in the studio and record parts for a song or whatever, or work on a song, you know. And so it's just become so much of our time is used up in the music. So no, I answer your question. No.
I had a question I wanted to ask you about that. I'm sorry, I blanked out.
That's all right.
Man, you've been all over the world. Favorite place you've traveled?
You know, I just got a chance to experience the UK a little bit, you know, like London, and walk around and have a few days. That was really great. But we go to Japan. Every time we release an album, we go to Japan. And I think that's got to be one of my favorite countries. I haven't hit a lot of Asian countries. So, I mean, Japan is the one that I've probably gone over there like 18 times.
Oh my God, that's quite. What do you like about it so much?
I just think the people, the whole culture is amazing. The whole honor system of how everybody, you know, treats each other. I mean, business practices, you know, a little tougher, but personally, people are very, very much family oriented. They don't like to insult people. They're very honorable when it comes to being polite to each other, and then the food's amazing. Shopping's great. I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, the countryside. You know, the buildings in Tokyo. I mean, just everything about it. The high tech. You know, but at the same time, they're just old with the new. If you go outside of Tokyo or outside the big cities, there's still those older cultures that still exist, and they don't tear everything down. They nurture the you know, the older part of the society. The farms are amazing when you're traveling on the trains. It's gorgeous. Europe is great too. That way, keep everything the same. You know,
it's very clean in Japan, isn't it?
Very, very clean. Clean Japan. I was struck by the UK too. London. I mean, the streets were gorgeous when you were walking around, and I mean, it's that's a great culture too.
That's where my wife's from. She's from the UK.
Very nice.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's cool over there.
We went to Wales and did a festival up there, and traveled down to this really remote campsite and did a festival, 80s festival. God, I wish I slipped my mind where in the heck we went.
They must love you guys there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think they do.
Yeah.
You know, we played one of the older theaters in London, and it wasn't so good. It's been around for like 40 years. And I don't know, man. We didn't have a great show. They didn't really like the fact that we played Damn Yankees, and we played some cover things, and you know, they kind of the review wasn't so good.
Really,
but the audience loved it. You know,
that's kind of weird. Why would I mean? That's part of all the music you guys come from, and
totally.
Yeah, it's really it's kind of weird.
I mean, we embraced it. I mean, we didn't go, well, why should we do that? You know, it's like that's our music.
Yeah.
I mean. So we didn't have such a great show there, but I know the audience loved it. I met a ton of fans afterwards. I went to a pub that was right outside of it, and all these fans came up and loved it. So I knew that we got over great.
That's cool.
But you know, it's weird when you go somewhere else, you go outside of the country. Europe embraces older music. 70s, 80s, 90s, you know.
Most of the artists I talk with, not prefer, but they say in general, Europe is not of the mindset of what have you done for me lately. They honor and respect the work you've done, period.
Totally.
You know, it's not like, well, you know, you haven't put out a hit album in 3 weeks, you know.
We played this festival in Sweden Rocks in Sweden. This was about 5 years ago.
Great musicians, great guitarists in Sweden, man.
I was so struck, I got to tell you, by the mixture of music that played. You know, the band that went on before us, 10cc.
Oh, my God. That's wild.
You wouldn't have believed it. The mixture of music, like Mastodon played after us. I mean, see, they're like Bill Graham, the old promoter. We used to put on like 10 years after B.B. King and Buddy Rich on a show. I mean, at the Fillmore.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that whole mindset of like, we're going to promote music. We're here to entertain the audience and educate the audience. Mm. You know, that's what Bill Graham was all about. It's like, okay, you haven't heard these guys on a bill before. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, we were so excited to play that festival because of all the bands that played on it, you know.
I'm glad you brought up Bill Graham because you worked with him and he put you on at the Fillmore. What was he like?
Oh my God. Energized always. Always trying to do the right thing when it came to producing a show. Like he was all about how the show was going to be presented to the audience. He really cared about the nuts and bolts that went into having a show, whether it was in a club or whether it was in Winterland or the Fillmore or in a stadium. You know, he was hands-on. I mean, I went to stadium shows and he'd be out there with a broom going across the stage. I mean, I'd be standing back there going, is that Bill Graham? Oh my God, I can't believe it. And then years later when I got a chance to work with him and having him come in to the dressing room and go, how's everything going for you guys? And like when we played with Judas Priest and a bunch of English roadies, you know, they come in, took everything from us. We had no writer, no nothing, not a single thing in our dressing room. And so when he came in, we said, well, we don't have any, like a couple of things, water, whatever. And he was so pissed off. He was like, he looked around and he goes, what do you mean you don't have anything here? He goes, oh, well, the guy, the tour manager, he took it from us. He goes, what? He goes, walks out the door. We're witnessing this. Walks out the door in the hallway. Goes, come here. He tells this guy to come over. He goes, how dare you? And he like ran this guy out in front of everybody, us and his crew. How don't you ever? This is my show. You had no power. You bring that stuff. Like total. And then he goes, so everything will be fine in a couple minutes. Just like that. And we're like, whoa, unbelievable. And then other times when we played with him, so kind with his stories. You could talk about Led Zeppelin back in the day. You could tell stories like when we were up and coming, Pat Benatar was on her first tour in 1979, put us on the show. And he came into our dressing room and told stories about Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. And, and said, hey, yeah, good to have you guys on the show and the whole thing. And then the next moment, if somebody was like making a mistake, he would be like screaming at them, and then he'd go back to like being Bill Graham and being the nice guy. And he was an amazing individual because of how much he cared about his job. Like going back to what we just were talking about earlier about job ethic and about passion about your gig. He just cared. He cared a lot because 1966 he made up the industry basically. Yeah. There were no big venues playing rock and roll music, and he just basically created an industry. Yeah.
He had a great voice. I've seen documentaries. I loved his voice. His speaking voice. It was just
Yeah.
Very.
Didn't he act too? He acted in a couple of movies and what was it? Bugsy. He was in that movie Bugsy.
Was that like Warren Buffett or something? Not Warren Buffett.
Yeah, Warren.
Shirley
Warren
MacLaine.
Beatty
Yeah, Warren Beatty.
Played
Yeah,
Bugsy, and so he was one of the other gangsters, like the New York mob.
I don't remember that.
I just saw the movie not too long ago. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that's Bill Graham
that's wild.
playing a part, and doing it well,
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, just like coming up and being a rookie and watching somebody like him, like putting on stadium shows, putting on Fillmore shows, putting on club shows, was passionate about everything he did. He cared. He really did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what shows he put on, man? Kelly, let me ask you 3 more questions, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. Is there anything you wish you'd done differently?
I have to say, probably just like, I wish I would have paid more attention to guitar playing and learned how to play, the guitar better. Because I think that I would probably be a better songwriter now if I would have learned how to play that instrument better, or even play piano.
But you played guitar pretty well.
What's that?
You said you played guitar pretty, adequately.
I did okay, but I just didn't keep up with it, and I just wish I would have just put more time into that. But I think, reading this book about Don Felder and how Henley was an English major, he studied the English language and became such a pro at putting together stories. And I think that education in general for me, because I never did well in school. I wish I would have done better at English, just learned more things in school, because,
sure.
I just didn't care about it. And music was everything. It still is in my life. It's so important.
Yeah.
I still learn so much from reading books about music history. I learned so much about it.
Musicians are some of the most well-read people I've met. Almost everybody that I've spoken to is a pretty voracious reader, or has gone through periods where they tear through books over their lives. Because you could tell they're always, people that read a lot are a little more intelligent.
Right.
And
I agree. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, man, you're good.
I just got a note on here. My battery's going down. I'm going to plug it in. But I've just been curious about rock history. And so I've just been reading all these books. Like I told you about the one from Felder. I read Bill Graham's biography. I've read there's this book about the 70s and 80s called Hitmen. That's a great book about the music industry. Crazy. And I even read about one of the characters we were talking about that signed us from Boardwalk. That's where I heard about Neil Bogart in that book.
Oh.
And Bruce Bird, who became the record company for us, signed us to Idea. I read things about him I never knew. I got really curious about the music business and about how it works. And these characters, Irving Azoff is all over it. He's in there. I don't know. I missed some of it because I was in clubs, playing clubs, 5-6 days a week. And I was so curious about it. And it was nice to go back and read about the characters that kind of invented the industry.
The industry, yeah. You guys have a tough job. It's not, I think one thing I've learned is that your jobs is much tougher than most people on the outside would believe. They don't realize the isolation, the dedication, the commitment is really off the charts. It's like really, being a professional athlete, pretty much.
That's really correct. It's it's, you know, like with my life, it's all consuming.
Yeah.
It's everything to me. I mean, little habits, hobbies that I have outside are, you know, have something to do with music. I do like going and searching, you know, and finding treasures at antique stores and stuff like that.
That's
I like
cool.
collecting boxes and tins and just simple things to concentrate on something that's other than music.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you got to have
but
something.
there's, you know, there's all those, you have to learn how to record. And, you know, so the last 10 years I learned how to be a good engineer. And, you know, I collect old analog pieces that I could put in my studio and use them. And, you know, the Pro Tools program is like, and all in.
And that's constantly being upgraded, man.
Crazy. I haven't done it. I refuse to upgrade. I'm in Pro Tools 10. I'm going to stay there. And, you know, Anthony Fox, the engineer, he works with us all the time. He mixes a lot of different artists. He told me, he said, you should never upgrade until they fix all these problems that they're having.
All the bugs.
With Pro Tools 11, 12. It crashes all the time. And he swears by Pro Tools 10. And that's where I'm at. It's kind of complicated. But.
Man, I forgot again. Most important lesson your business has taught you?
Oh yeah, I think that knowing everything about what publishing, what your songwriting is going to bring to your career and income, and I think you ought to be really educated in all aspects of your career, because I think that when you're a young artist and you come into it, and somebody signs you to a contract, you should know what that contract and what that is going to mean to your life, how it's going to affect you 10 years from now. Because I think, you know, I mean, in a lot of ways, we wouldn't be here if we didn't sign the contract. But at the same time, we had to give something away. I mean, we had to give half of our publishing away to get signed. Well, nowadays it's like everything. They want everything. They want, you know, the merchandising rights, and they want to do songwriting rights and publishing rights. I mean, you know, because, you know, they're putting the money up to make a record in a lot of cases. So you have to give up something to them for them to get that. So that's, you know, we did that, and I don't think it was a bad thing, but when you get down the road and you realize that you're not getting the income that you should have had, and you give away a lot, that, you know, maybe you got into it for the wrong reasons. You know, it's just, so there's a fine line there.
The other
are you going to do it because you love doing it, or are you doing it because you want to make money?
Well, the other issue is, what is your choice? Can you then say, hey, wait a minute, before we sign, I want to go shop this contract around, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe let's say, hey, well, go ahead, fuck you. We're changing.
What it was.
Actually, you know what? We're not interested in you. You go shop your thing around.
Yeah, I mean,
because
we got passed on by everybody. There was only one company, and it happened to be Bruce Bird and Camel and Boardwalk and Neil Bogart. All those people believed in our music, but they're putting up $200,000, $300,000 to make a record. That's not even supporting it at radio and
putting on the shows and sending you out there. Yeah, it's a tough. Yeah. I know, it's very tough. And hey, thank God you were around when you got Mechanical Royalties and you wrote a song that sold. Like,
so lucky,
you know,
all of us. I mean, we were so lucky. I mean, thank God we had Jack Blades, you know, who wrote most of the songs. Yeah. You know, I mean, I got to give that. You know, I got to say that who else would have been there for us? But Jack, being a team player, you know, he gave up a lot. You know, and I really respect him for being where he's with us now, and you know, it's still with us. I mean, and him and I, you know, are close friends. Brad and him and I are the closest we could ever be, and And now we do everything together. We write everything together. I mean, Jack's still a great lyricist, and he does a lot of that too. But we write a lot of the stuff together, and thank God that, we've made some really good records in the last 4 or 5 years that have been some of the best stuff we've ever done. It's because we love it. We're not getting paid.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much as we were back in the day to make records. That's what I mean. Not getting the budgets.
No, I know.
Like a fraction. And we just love it. We love what we do, and so we get in there and we work hard. Still, we still have that.
And most of your gigs now are all weekend fly dates.
Yeah, 3-4 days a week.
Okay.
Usually 2, 3 in a row. So yeah. We do most of the hard work is the flying part of it. It's the travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, this week we're going up to South Dakota and Nebraska. This year's been more just twos. We usually have a bus run at least 2 or 3 times a year, but this year it's been all about the weekends. So, which is nice because we get to come home.
Yeah, you get to hang out with your family.
Be home and not be in a bus traveling somewhere else.
Man, last question. What's been the biggest change? You're such an easy guy to talk to, man. I really appreciate it. I could hang out with you all day. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this change has been deliberate and intentional, and how much is just a factor of aging?
Well, I think the biggest step that I made that changed my life was getting sober. Yeah. Was stopping all that like mind-altering drugs that change your emotional state, the way you think, eat. I mean, everything. I mean, I think that's probably a big reason why we're still around, is that we don't alter our chemistry with chemicals. Our bodies are fragile, man. They are just fragile as hell. And I think that was probably the biggest decision I ever made in my life. It was in 1986, on December 6th, I decided to stop doing drugs and alcohol and cigarettes. I was a smoker too. So
that's great, man. I'm really happy for you.
Every time I see somebody taking a hit off of that, I think about it though. I think about how it tastes.
What, a cigarette?
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to smoke.
Did you ever smoke?
Yeah, I smoked for years. It's gross. I smoke cigars now once in a while, but cigarettes, I stopped smoking cigarettes and I started working out, and I've been working out ever since in the gym, 30 years probably. Yeah. It feels so much better. Yeah. It's just, I feel so much better, man. Everything, you're more confident. You just feel better. You look better. That's for sure too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we just realize when we were younger what we're putting into our bodies, as far as like Coke, I mean, have you ever seen what goes into I mean, that was a big eye opener to me too, was how they make cocaine.
No, what is it?
I mean, it's all these solvents and all these chemicals that they use to wash it. I mean, all that poison is still in there.
Yeah.
And it gets in your system, and you're just doing poison,
Wow. Yeah, man.
I mean, it's just, it's not good. Not good. So that helped me out too. That helped me a lot to kind of get over the whole idea of, I mean, come on, it's like drugs and alcohol. I mean, sometimes you can't stop yourself. You just can't. It's physically addictive. It's changing the whole makeup of your brain and your chemistry and your body. And I mean, that's a tough thing, man. So really, addiction's a monster.
No, addiction's horrible. It's very tough, man.
Yeah.
Kelly, I can't thank you enough for everything. Let me tell people where to find you. First of all, go to the Night Ranger website and come see Kelly and the rest of the band on tour. They're touring, they're touring constantly. buy their new records when they come out, and check out Kelly online. It's Kelly Keagy Music. His last name is Kelly with a Y, Kelly. Keagy is Keagy Music on Facebook and Instagram. So check him out there. And man, I can't thank you enough. You're such a cool dude. Any final words?
I appreciate it so much. The opportunity is amazing, dude, and good luck with this. And hey, man, it shows you love what you do.
Thank you, man.
It's really a great thing, man, and good luck with it.
Thanks. Any final words of wisdom?
Oh no, man! Staying power and longevity is everything.
Staying
Take care
power.
of yourself. That's what it is, man.
That's right, man.
Live fine and enjoy life.
That's right. Hey, man, thank you. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, share it with your friends on social media. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Kelly Keagy for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com and sign up to get on our newsletter list. You can get advance notice of guests and get to ask them questions. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitars, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.